Alright, this should work. Turn down the music a little bit. Oh, every time I switch between scenes it seems to just remove the entire IDE, but other than that. Oh yeah. Yeah, GXPEngine is still there in all its glory. Slightly better now. Slightly more professional. We've added so much stuff to it. Haven't had the time to eat yet, so I'm just, consuming drinks in hope for calories, I guess. I don't know if you people know, but the accreditation was today. Basically liquid dinner. I wouldn't call it that because it sounds disgusting, but yeah. Let's kind of remove most of what I've added for last time. I've made a small change to this version of the engine. I've added the GLFW set window position method, which if you can find it in the GLFW documentation, you can probably create a method for it. So I had to create this one manually. But it allows me to, normally when you run the game, it will spawn in the middle of your screen. But now it should spawn somewhere on my right side of the screen and not covering the IDE, because that would cause some glitches. Oh yeah, of course. Of course I break everything immediately. Nice. Normally if it would spawn over my IDE, you get like weird little glitches. But no. Right. I received some questions and some suggestions that I would like to cover. A lot of you know that there's now a tile map parser built into GXP, but you're not really sure on how to use it. And I have good news, because we're working on it as well to make it easier to use. But for now, I can show you a way to access most of the functionality without needing to wait until we roll out an update. Let me check. Ugh, so many browser windows. All right. There's a little program called Tiled, T-I-L-E-D, and it's what we used to use for level editing and such. Good evening. And if it doesn't crash my computer. Nope. Oh, there it is, covering the window. It's what I showed during some of the lectures as well. It's the tile editor. Now what's important to notice here is that I have multiple layers here. That is something you don't need to have in your initial version of the game. But I'm not going to make a totally new map for this. I just want to show you how to read a TMX file into data that you can actually use in the GXPEngine with the built-in parser that Paul added. First I'm going to put the TMX file in the correct directory. Bin debug TMX. It's called level.tmx. Oh yeah, so did you already start the game design? I think it's game design. Part of level design course at least. Yeah, sweet. Well, that makes it more helpful because you'll get familiar with the engine. I think it's free and open source, right? So you can use it however you like. By the way, is the music still playing in the background? Because I can't tell. There seems to be some very low output. Confused by what? Maybe if I crank the volume. It's just background noise. You can see it's the instrumental versions of the Midnight stuff. It's too loud. Oh shit. I'll put it somewhere in the middle. Shit. Sorry. I put it up as loud as my mic, but it's probably too much. I'll keep it in the middle. By the different things the teachers are saying. You mean, what do you mean by that? Some people say you have to use tiles, some people say you don't? Oh, that's stupid. Yeah, I think you have to use tile. I think Paul didn't spend all this effort building this engine for you guys not to use tile. Unless you want to use your own game, maybe that's allowed as well. Oh, that is weird. It's Patrick's course, right? I think you can ask him, like, even if maybe to clarify it with your lab teacher if that is possible or not. Yeah, I can imagine people not knowing exactly what to do about that. First I'm going to show you guys an example of how to read from a TMX file though. Similar to, I mean it's exactly the same to how it's been done for the level design class. You have to include this though, you have to say using tiled map parser to make it easier on yourself. But I guess might not be necessary. Using directive is unnecessary. Well, I'm not using it. Visual Studio. Is it like this? I actually didn't look up. Why doesn't it recognize my thingy? I do have a slightly different version than you guys of the GXPEngine, with some updates that you might not have. Yeah, the thing is, the tiled map parser, I don't think it's part of the GXPEngine, because we want to. You can also use it in Unity. It's not specific to the GXPEngine. I agree. I think JSON files are better, but XML is easier to parse. But JSON files are smaller, and I mean, nowadays you can have them auto parse for you anyway. Still though, I think. There we go. So this is slightly different from how you would usually use a specific class. I am using the tiled map parser directive. Oh, hang on. Stop this. Create some more space. But this is a static method, meaning that I don't need an instance of map parser to use it. If you click on it, you'll see that it's a public static map read map. That means you don't have to create an instance of a map parser. You can just do map parser the type plus the method, making it useful for these kind of use cases. I'm not a big fan of using static otherwise, but this is a good use case for it. Are there many second years around? More second years than first years now. And also, if you check this, you'll see it returns a map, which is a bit of an unfortunate name. I mean, it makes sense from a gaming perspective because map is obviously the type of level you'll be loading, but map in programming is also quite a common name for a sort of dictionary class. But whatever. Map equals map. So this should include everything you need. So this little thingy here has a bunch of layers, which are the layers I showed you guys earlier. And these layers contain the tiles. And you can loop over them. Layer, in all the layers. Been using Unity too much lately. Console.writeLine. Layer dots name, for example. And if I run this, there'll be nothing on the screen yet, but there will be some interesting output. Yeah, you can see the background, parallax moon, parallax mountains, fill-in, main, lethal, foreground. These are all the layers that I have in my level. I only need one of the layers. Probably. Which one do I use for collision detection again? The main. Yeah, probably the main. So let's first see if we can find that one. Main. Found it. Normally you would load all layers and just show them on top of each other. Found it. Okay, so I can't do it like that. That's good to know. Layer is null. By default is nothing. Call this one main layer, and that's the one I'll be using for all of my collision detection and what have you. And after we found it, we can stop this loop by breaking it. So at this point, we should have the main layer. is for each bad performance. Are we gonna start with that stuff already? It is, I mean, yes, it is worse than using a normal for loop with an integer, but I don't think it matters in this case. Like the differences will be very small, quite minimal. Probably. Yeah. I guess if you make a game that's very complex and loops over all layers like several times per frame, you would consider switching. But as long as it completes in 1/60th of a second, you should be fine, right? Main layer. Okay, yeah. The layer has a property called data, which contains all the inner XML, which is basically a string of all the tile numbers that we have. Actually, all the tile IDs. So if I output this, it's probably going to look pretty fantastic in my output here. Or nothing. Or it takes a while to load, maybe. Or nothing. See if I even get there. Data as a toString, sure. Height with name. Data has encoding and inner XML. toString just returns the inner XML. All right. Ah, this should work, but apparently it's empty. So maybe I broke my my own code thingy. Or it's a lot of enters. No. Strange. Alright, I should probably use a different example of a level file then. Do I have a yes, I do have a simple spreadsheet. I think this one requires the player sprite, the tile sheet. Oh, and the moon. I guess I'll just break my own level. Maybe later. Don't remind me. You guys being nostalgic about the GXP engine? I mean, you didn't have to do all that. Didn't have to keep into account all that 3D modeling and all these animations. Did you hear that Unity's new version now has nested prefabs? Tile is pretty good. I think Tile is like a very good tool for what it is. And it being free is even better. Alright, removed all layers. Except for the one. It is mostly empty though, so I'm just gonna put some stuff up top. Right there. Or maybe I'll just create a tiny little layer. A happy little layer. Man, there seems to be a lot of empty space here, so I'm not sure what it's outputting, but it doesn't seem to work correctly. Alright. I'm gonna debug this a little bit. Not too much. But it might be that this version is broken. I don't want to spend too much time on it though. Yeah, I see what the problem is. I've seen it. It's my fault. It's my problem. It's my fault. It's because the inner XML doesn't exist in my version of the level because I store everything as XML, not as an encoded file. You'll realize what that means for later on. Or in fact, I can show you right now. This is the level of TMX file. I'm not sure if it's readable here, but you can see that there's some properties here that it automatically read by the GXPEngine's tiled map parser. And here in the data layer, there's a lot of empty tiles. A lot of empty tiles. And that's somewhere at the bottom probably. Here are some tiles. Probably the ones I just drew. But this is not the way the default version expects its data. It expects this also to be one string instead of XML. So let me see if I can convert that really quick. Save as, maybe? Or new map. There we go. 100 by 100 tiles. This is 16 by 16. Test. Yeah, these tiles don't fit correctly. But I'm sure this one is saved in a slightly different way. Yeah. This makes more sense. You can see like it's stored as all just numbers and commas. Yeah, but yeah, you can save it as XML, but it's already doing that, and the version we packed with the GXPEngine does not use it like that. The name, gotta have to change that to main again, otherwise that won't work. I call this test. You should be able to change it without like having to create a new one, that's true. I'm not sure how to do that in Tiled right now. Ah, there we go. So yes, the layer name is main, and here you can kind of see the pattern I drew with the tooling, like off the map. So these are all just numbers. Numbers, commas, and break lines. Enters, I guess you could say. So this should be all you need to get started. This defines which tiles you should use, but you need a little bit of C# knowledge to maybe break this apart into something that's a little bit more usable. And it is not a 2D array. However, let me check my email real quick, because I think, let's see, I just got an email from from Paul that he was working on the 2D functionality. Let's see. Yeah, I'll show you. We've been working on adding a method that converts the string data to a two-dimensional array. So like, I think today, or like he was working on it, but today he fixed it. So I'll upload a newer version of the engine at some point next week. That is easier to use, I guess. But for now, all you have to really know is that strings in C# can be split by a certain token, and by splitting it on the actually on the comma, you can see it here. Like, you can already get a lot of information that's quite useful. Oh wait, you have to split by a character, not a string. So single quotes. Yeah, the 2D array will be easier to use. We were contemplating if we should just give that away or should you have people figure it out. But I think we can give it away for now. Or, you know, Paul convinced me. This will return a string array of tile IDs. And I'm gonna do for each again. I'm sorry. For each ID and tile ID, solid right line ID. There should be one big long list of IDs. Keep showing the output. 00000 enter 00000 enter. Yeah, some 2's in there, but yeah, this is kind of expected. The empty ones though, you don't really want those, but if you're iterating over this, you already have pretty much all the information you need. You know if it's a 0 that you won't need it. So if you check the ID here, well, I should do it like this because it's a string. If it's 0, don't do anything. In fact, skip it. Did you know this one existed? The continue? It's pretty much the opposite of a break. Instead of stopping the entire loop, it just says like, this iteration right now is done. And it tries again in the next loop. So if it is a 0, it won't print anything. It will just skip to the next iteration. It's good to know, this one. It will come in handy in the future. We also don't want to do anything if it's empty. Something like that. I guess it's not empty. I guess it's a space. We'll see what this does. So now it should only output the numbers. What does continue do versus having nothing in the if statement though? Hang on one sec, let me check the output. It's not it's probably an empty character like this. Continue basically skips everything that's below it. It's the same as return in that aspect. So return just stops a method at this point in time. Break stops a loop completely, and then it will continue under the loop. And continue stops a current iteration. So every time in a loop you iterate, something changes and you try again. Something changes, you try again. The continue says like, okay, you don't have to check this one anymore, go to the next iteration, the one after this. So basically, yeah, it goes to the next for each. You could say that, yeah. It just says this iteration is done. We're done here. So if it is like a 0 string, or it is an enter symbol, I don't know if this works. Let me check. On Mac it might be something different. /r/n or something. Yeah. Maybe I can just copy it from here. It's invisible, but there is a character here. I don't think I can paste it here though, because it's an enter. No. Oh, it actually pastes the /n. That's pretty funny. Yeah. I think it also has a function called trim, which removes all leading and trailing whitespace characters from the current string object. That's good to know. So that means that if there's an invisible symbol at the beginning or of end, so also including spaces, it will remove it. So I guess you don't have to assign it. Yeah, and it works with all white spaces, I think. So enters, line breaks, but you have to store it. Let's do it like this. Dang, my computer is slow. sure what it's doing. I'm having some problems with Visual Studio lately. Like eating up resources. That's why I switched to Writer, which I would highly recommend if you're a student, because it's free for students. And pretty expensive for everybody else. Yeah. There's also there's also still a 0 here. That means that it probably includes an enter right in front of it. Alright, well, there are several ways we can go about this, but for now let's not make it too difficult for ourselves. Here you have an entire list of ideas. You have to check if it's actually a number. So that's the easiest way. If it is an enter, it won't actually be a number. So you have an integer dot, no, not interface, integer dot, or just int. Try parse, for example, which will try to parse a string, in this case ID, into a number. Int ID as number. There's nothing. So if we can make this into a number, int.tryParse will return false if it can't, and it will return true if it can. So only if we can make a number out of it, align the ID as number. Also, this might be a little weird. There's an out keyword here, which is not very common. It is from the same people that made PHP Storm, which is also good software. I hate PHP, but PHP Storm is pretty good. And also WebStorm and such. Yeah, what happens here is basically I say, hey, there's an integer here, but I don't say it equals something yet. It's just the memory for an integer is here, but it doesn't do anything yet. The try parse, if it succeeds, it will put the number in the integer here. So then this number will have a value, but only if it succeeds. So, see if this is enough. It should work with 0 as well. Yep, so that's a lot of 0s and 2s, but no enters anymore. So that's good, because the main layer in our case also has another thingy that we can use. It has its width. So if we were to count this for each, or just use a normal for loop, and then we can use the index as a number, we know after how many numbers we need to go to the next line of sprites. Because as soon as it's larger than our own width, we need to move down one. So if I were to change this to a for loop, int index equals 0, don't crash. Thank you. Small in length, add 1. The string ID is now, tile ID is at the index. Every time our index is larger than our width, we need to move down one line of sprites. And you could do that, for example, by also keeping track of which Y you're currently in. Or better yet, which row. Row start at 0. And every time the index is larger than the width, or you should probably check index modulo main layer dot width equals 0, and the index is larger than 0, we move down one line. So row plus plus. So you now know which x value you are on, because that is the current index modulo the main layer's width, and you know which y value you're on inside of your tile grid, which is well, your row. Right, this might be going a little fast, so I'm covering how to read a tile map, the current system in in the GXPEngine. But I'm only covering how to read it and how to convert it to information that you'll be needing. Because right now, you'll have your X position within the grid of the tiles, you have your Y position within the grid of the tiles, and of course, you have your ID as a number, which represents which tile you'll be using. If you have a relatively simple tile map, you have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles, you can just check like, hey, if it is 1, then create a grass tile like this, etc. Like for 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever. Or you can use a switch case. Later on I'll show you a way that will make it a lot easier to use with like a sprite sheet. Maybe if you're clever, like you probably will be by the end of this course, you realize that if you use the sprite sheet you use for your tile map, which is already something the GXPEngine can read, because it'll look like this. I don't know if you guys can see, but the animation sprite that the GXPEngine has also has support for tile maps, because you just have to count how many different tiles there are in columns and how many rows there are, and then you can make an animation sprite. But instead of animating it, you can just create an animation sprite like this. Animation sprite tile equals new animation sprite. The name is tilesheetcomplete.png, and there are, I don't know, 32 rows and 32 columns. And instead of creating a new sprite for each and every one of them, you just set the index frame, to the ID as a number -1. Because, as you might have noticed, the in tiled, 0 means no tile at all. So it starts at 1. And an animation sprite doesn't start at 1, it starts at 0, like an array would. Enums. What do you mean by enums? Oh, you mean for switching out the different types of tile? Perhaps. That would be useful if you're not using tiled. Because if you are using tiled, that means you get numbers anyway, and to convert them to an enum first, and then check which tile you're having, that might be a little too much work. But that is good if you want to do levels without using a level editor, without using tiled, because then you can just make an array of enum types, grass, 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 etc., and then basically render that as if it were a map. But now you pretty much have everything you need, because you have an animation sprite tile. You have to set its x to the x probably times the height, width actually, and the tile.y times its own height, because these values are just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to how big your map is. In my case, 16 by 16. You still have to put them in the right place on the screen, which means multiply them by the size of your tiles, which should be uniform, as in they should all be the same. You can tell here that they're all pretty much the same size. Yeah, they are all exactly the same size. There's empty space surrounding the ones that are smaller on the screen. Yeah. Any questions about this specifically? Otherwise, I'll move on. I think I've given away enough that people should be able to get started with it. So, I'm going to scroll up a little bit, see if I can this be bigger. Thank you. So, you're using a tilemap parser. You have to do it like that, because it's not part of the GXPEngine, it's something separate. Because you might be able to use this for Unity and such as well. It's good to have your library separated. You use the static method readMap to read in any file name. Be sure to put it and all its content, so also the sprite sheet, in the debug directory. This is just a way to find the main layer, but if you know it only has one layer, you can also do, if you're 100% sure, you can just grab the first layer like this. So you can just say the main layer equals this, and then you don't have to do all of this because there's only one for sure. Or if you know the order, you can just pick the one you need. You're going to need. And this whole part of the code basically converts whatever tile made to usable sprites that we can put on the screen. And it's good to know that the animation sprite under the hood stores the tile sheet. So it knows it only has to show a certain small part of the tile sheet, and it will automatically know how to retrieve the texture from memory again without restoring it completely. So if you have multiple animation sprites that use the same tile sheet, that doesn't cost any extra memory. It'll reuse the same tile sheet. That is some different music. Hang on. All right. Put that over there. All right. Yeah, I think this should be enough to get you started with this. But if there are any questions, feel free to ask them. But this should give you the possibility to create a tile map with a single layer at least, and convert that to something you can see on the screen. No camera yet, no movement with it. It'll just output it on the screen as if it is one big image. Exactly. As soon as you can get it on the screen, that's what most people need. Often it's just a background. In this case, it could also be something you can use for collision detection later, but for now it should be enough. All right. Let me grab my list of things I wanted to cover in previous versions as well. I already covered, during the lecture I already kind of covered something. You want it for player movement. Depends. If you're making a platformer, it's going to be slightly difficult because you'll need to know which ones you can bump into from which directions, and also how to apply gravity. I've made an example of how to do simple platformer controls, but I'll cover it during next week's lecture. Lecture. God. Yeah, lecture. Sure. Because there's some intricacies you might not think of immediately. I've already showed you how to do gravity and such, and that it is actually slightly more difficult than you might imagine. And if the gravity is not a single part of the screen like the bottom, but it is actually any type of block that you don't want your character to be able to move through, you need some more clever collision detection. Top down though, it might be easier. You can probably use the default collision detection. I'm going to remove all of this and show you how you could use the default collision detection slightly easily. Just have to think of a simple use case. We already have a player that we can move around. We have a projectile in the form of our brown bunny. Maybe I should make an asteroid first that shows up on the map and that you can shoot. Yeah, okay. First, I have to reintroduce my player. Don't know why it's so slow sporadically. Add player? No, add shot. I think we also have the background, but let's leave the background for now. That's the player. Continuous movement. Oh yeah, click to shoot. Let's make that oh fuck, it was in the main game. I think I removed all of it. I can just re-add it. If input dot get key down, you'll be typing this a lot. Key dot space. So if we press the space bar once, create a new projectile. Projectile.x equals the player.x. Projectile.y equals the player.y. And projectile.rotation equals the player rotation. Basically, steal everything from the player. Alright, well it compiles, that's good. Alright, there we go, shooting the Brum. I forgot I put the bunnies in. I'm going to do a little something I did during the lecture as well. I'm going to apply inertia but also drag. So the speed right now is constant. I want it to slow down over time. So I'm just gonna multiply it by 0.9. So it loses 10% every frame. So otherwise it's pretty hard to control. Yeah, so now it'll just easier. It'll slow down to crawl, and then I can just shoot. All right, let's add an asteroid. Something for our spaceship to shoot at. Classic. Yes, GXPEngine. Add file. Will this show up? Yeah. Add new file. There we go. Asteroid. Empty class. Sure. None of this shit. We are using the GXPEngine, and it is going to be a sprite, and it's called, I think I called it asteroid.png. Let me do a quick check here. Yeah, physics. So glad they exist in real life. Oh, I called it meteor. Crap. Alright, I'll just rename it asteroid. It's fine, it's fine. There's no copyright infringement here. In my game, I'll just add one asteroid. Asteroid est equals new asteroid. Also show you a cool functionality that you can use. You've probably already seen it, and you've used it tons of times during processing, but we have our own utility that has a good random function, and you can get either integers or floats. In this case, I'll just want a random integer between, let's say, 100 and our width, which in the game is just width. And the asteroid.y is also utility random between 100. So it doesn't spawn in the top somewhere, so I have a little bit of safe space in the top left. Height. And as with everything, we have to add it as a child, otherwise it won't show up. Yep. Alright, let's see what it does. Oh, it's, I was just wondering where, but it's almost completely off screen. All right, maybe, maybe limit it a little bit. Minus 100. So at least keep it on the screen. That was very unlucky. There we go. That's better. Yeah, but as you can see, it's just there. It's even above the player because I added it later. No interactions with it yet. But what do we want to do? Well, so this is slightly philosophical. Yeah, the height minus 100 in the game means the height of the screen. You could also do game.height here. It's the same thing in this case. But it is, so it's the width of the screen minus 100 and the height of the screen minus 100, meaning it'll spawn somewhere inside of the, like a little bit of a margin. Oh, oh yeah, good suggestion, because yeah, otherwise it was super unlucky that it spawned on side of the screen. That is like a low chance, but okay. All right, so we want the projectile to hit the asteroid, and the asteroid to then be destroyed, right? So who carries that responsibility? Should the projectile hit the asteroid, or should the asteroid be hit by the projectile? I mean, should the asteroid also be destroyed if it is hit by the player, for example? As such, which is now easier. Yay, math. I think, in my humble opinion, that a projectile does damage. So yes, I agree. I think it's the projectile's duty. The projectile impacts something, like it bounces into something or it crashes into something, and that does damage. In this case, our little brown bunny here is responsible for dealing damage to whatever it hits. So in the projectile class, I'll add this method. Public void on collision, I think that's what it's called. Game object other. So this method will automatically be called as soon as the projectile bounces into any of the other ones. I'm just gonna give the player a name real quick. I think it already has a name. Call this player. So it's easier to see what we'll be bumping into. This player. Asteroids. Name will be asteroid. I think this is a property of every game object. Yeah, every game object has a name. Useful for this kind of situations. So, yeah, when I fire a projectile, every frame it has an overlap, it will call the on collision with the other object it's colliding with. So if I output this, other.name, oh wait, not using system, so the console won't work. There. All right. Let's run this. I forgot it was called on collision. I think it's called on collision. Oh, I guess we'll see. Pichu. Oh. Oh, doesn't keep the output on top here. Pin this bad boy. There we go. As you might see, it says play, asteroid. So apparently it collided with the player for 7 frames and then with the asteroid for 4 frames. Yeah, if I get closer to the asteroid, you'll see it'll collide with the asteroid quite more often than it does the player. But yeah, that's not really what we want. Well, it is and it isn't. So because we're shooting it from the player's position into the player's direction, that means that initially it'll be overlapping with the player quite a bit until it has like left its gun, I guess you could say. So we have to kind of know what we're hitting. So if the other object we're hitting is name equals player, then we kind of just don't do anything. Or the other way around, if the other name is asteroid, we do something. That is also something you could do. You could change the spawn point of the hang on one sec. Of the projectile. Yeah, instead of it being exactly on the player X and Y, you could spawn it slightly in front of the player. Or something like that. But then you first have to calculate where that would be. So you have to, well, sos castoa. You have to do some sine and cosine magic to calculate where a position slightly in the front of the player would be. Or, but this is getting a little bit ahead of us. But you could basically use what's already here. So if we want to move the player a little bit to the front, where the gun would be, we could just move it 0 over its x-axis, and let's say 32 over its y-axis. Then set the player x and projectile x and projectile y to the player x and y after it is moved, and also its rotation. And then move the player back. As if nothing happened. Because, like I said, at the end of the update function is where everything has to be in place for the show to happen. So everything that will be shown on the screen. That's true. Otherwise you can just overtake it. If the projectile is slower than the player, you can just, yeah, you can overtake it and get hit by your own bullet. Which, yeah, would be interesting. This, it feels a bit dirty, but it does work. Like, it moves the player ahead 32 pixels. So I don't know if that's enough. Let's do it slightly more. Let's move it ahead 100, 100 in front, and then 100 back. So you move the player 100, you set the projectile to the new position of the player and its rotation, and then you move it back 100. That is part of game design. Any good game engineer will say, if it's a hack and it works, it's not a hack. Or something like that. Oh, let's rerun it. Alright, so now the bunny should spawn quite far in front of the player. Oh, crap! It spawned behind it. Crap! I moved it in the wrong direction. I guess I have my sprite upside down. Alright, no worries. We'll switch this around. We'll move it minus 100 in the direction, and then 100. I think the GXPEngine assumes your sprites are facing downwards, not upwards. If the physics look good, the physics are good. Correct. I support Hans in that deception. Yeah, there we go. So now you can also, like, it shoots quite far in front of the player. You obviously have to play around with this a little bit to make it, or you can just measure your sprite and see how many pixels there are. Probably around 40, 50. And then it'll shoot from there. So now there's no collisions with the player either. Unless you go really fast and then you shoot. Then there's collisions with the player. But we ignore those. Because the projectile only checks if the other name is an asteroid. And then we're going to do something. This game object is whatever we've been crashed into. We know that it's an asteroid because we checked its name. Yeah, that's true. In Unity you can use an empty game object to spawn in front of. In the GXPEngine you can also do that. You can create a new game object. Game object gun position, maybe. is new game object. I don't know if you can instantiate a game object. You can't. But there is something called a pivot, which is an empty game object. I don't know if you can see the thingy here. Oh. An empty game object. You can use it as a container, which is exactly what you could be doing for this. So you have a pivot gun position, which is nothing but just a position in 2D space. And that pivots gun position dot y equals 64. And we add it as a child to the player, not to the game. And then we can use the gun position to spawn our projectiles from, because it will also rotate with the player and it will move with the player. It's basically the same thing as moving it back and forth once. Of course you have to make it publicly available and such. But this is similar to in Unity adding an empty game object as basically a placeholder. But we're not going to do that. We're going to keep the hacky way right here. We're going to move our player 100 pixels one direction, place our projectile, and then move it back 100 pixels. As if nothing happened. And then you can see, like, if you're doing this and you're shooting, nothing happens. Like, it doesn't twitch out or anything, it doesn't flicker. It just does this. So, something I'll be covering next week during the lecture anyway, so I might as well spoil it here. You can also check, you don't have to check by name, though that is pretty handy. You can also check like this. If other is, like literally is, not equals, asteroid. And then asteroid the class type. Log. It's an asteroid. Oh, it's not called log, it's called right line. Ah, I've been using Unity too much. Pachoo! Pachoo! Should probably clear this console. No, this... Yeah, it's an asteroid, it's an asteroid, yeah. I know. Phew. It's an asteroid. You do need a start screen. Like the question is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's do we have to make the game with a menu, start screen, and difficulties and options or not? Difficulties, options, preferences, and such are optional. If you have a game that has easy to implement difficulties, I would recommend you do something with that. Like it's thinking that you can start at a higher level that things move faster or something. That's fine. You do need a start screen. So like any good arcade game, you need a splash screen in front of it, and you have to either select start or select level or something like that, and then the game should start. But I will explain during the lectures on how to do this properly without too much fuzz. It's not super difficult, but it might take some thinking. I think, the way you can add menus easily is by creating an empty game object, basically hanging all the menu stuff under that, and then just removing it the moment the game starts. Then everything is gone and your game might be behind there. First though, I'm going to make our projectile actually do something. So, our asteroid needs to be destroyable. So I'm just going to call a method. I'm going to add a method here called kill me. No, a little too brutal. Impact. Sure. And what this does is just, it destroys the asteroid. Yep. So as soon as impact is called, it's just gone. But it also leaves a message. Don't forget about me. And then it's gone. course I have to use the system, otherwise I can't log. So I've added a simple function to the asteroid that does this, and I'm also gonna make it slightly rotate, because that's cool. Because asteroids should rotate in space. Rotation plus equals 1. Just 60 degrees per second. No, the game does not have to be playable on the arcade machine. If you can play it on your laptop, it's fine. The next project, however, yes, you will have to make a game for the arcade machine. But that is after you've already made a game for game engineering. Yeah, so this is just to get you started with the GXPEngine and how to read input and how to structure a game. Yeah, it's rotating. Not around its center. Crap, I keep forgetting. Set origin, width divided by 2, height divided by 2. So in the middle. Don't crash. Can you guys see my mouse? My beach ball of death mouse. They make it nice and colorful, but it's still computer crashing. Oh, this is taking longer than normal. Rest still works. Yeah, it does seem pretty dead. Don't know what happened. Wow, it actually crashed. Nice going. It's almost as if Microsoft software doesn't work very well on Mac-based systems. Other way around as well. I think iTunes on Windows is a piece of shit. No, I don't want Java file. Let's see if it's back. Doesn't show up yet. Let me see if I can. Is it back? It's back. Every time you have to install an update, it's like, did you know Java covers the entire planet? Did you know? Do you know you're stupid for not using Java? Ah. Oh, okay. That's okay. I can. Don't crash again. Don't you know Java is the best ever? Alright, there we go. Now it rotates in a more normal position. I can still shoot it. Yeah. I'm going to do two things. First, when the projectile collides with something, I'm going to destroy it. Because I don't want it to keep flying after it hits something. That's kind of weird. So I just call the destroy method as soon as I hit something else. And in fact, yeah, I'll just do it like this. That's the first thing. So now they shouldn't fly through the planet anymore. Whoops. Alright, let's see. Tink. Tink. Yeah, they don't go through it anymore. Tink, 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 tink. I don't know if you guys can see if the frame rate is high enough, but it doesn't. Next, we know that what we're crashing into is an asteroid. And we also know that the asteroid has the impact function, method, I should say. So we have to do a little something called casting. And we can do that in several ways, and probably the most clear way is this. Asteroid equals other. It'll give an error. Like, hey, but this is a game object. This is not an asteroid. But we know it's an asteroid, so we can just say like, actually, like we hush it. We say like, we whisper to the other object, asteroid. Meaning that now we should interpret it as an asteroid. Like you can see it's between parentheses. But you should only do that if you're sure the object is what you're casting it to. This is called casting, and you've already had it during processing at some point, but still. I think if you do it outside of the check, no, this doesn't complain. Writer, the other editor that I use, will complain like, hey, you didn't check if it's an asteroid before casting it. Which is good, because that could cause some really ugly crashes. First, let's move the destroy all the way to the end. We now know it's an asteroid, and this asteroid has the impact function. So, to reiterate, when we collide with another object, we check if it's an asteroid. Check if it is an asteroid. By simply typing other is asteroid. Not equals, because that'll cause some errors. We'll output like, hey, it is an asteroid. And because we're 100% sure it's an asteroid, we can cast it to an asteroid and have the other object now be represented as this. And then we can call the impact function, which, as you recall, writes something and that destroys it. Alright, let's try this. And the game is born. And now I have nothing else to shoot, but okay. Let me see. You can check on collision game object asteroid or something like that. You can call it whatever you like. I just call it other because it implies that it's not the current object you're colliding with. But you can call it whatever you like. You can also just call it game objects, or you can call it asteroid, but that would be a bit misleading because it can also, on collision, will be called by anything it crashes into. So if it does crash into the player because you're so fast, it is not an asteroid that you're crashing into. The other thing is actually the player. So because I'm not sure yet of what it is, I just call it other. But colliding object is also like a valid term because it is the object you're colliding with. You're just not 100% sure what it is yet. Only after you've checked what it is. Other is asteroid. Yeah, asteroid at impact. This is extremely useful, like being able to do it like this. So this will work for most games, but the GXPEngine checks every object with every other object to see if they're overlapping. So if you have a lot of stuff on your screen, this will become very slow. But for now, this is more than enough. Later on, like in the next lecture even, I'll show you how to optimize this stuff to be fast, even if you have hundreds of bullets. Thousands even. So, yeah, asteroid destroyed. Then what? Game's kind of empty. Kind of want to make a new asteroid. Maybe this whole thingy here? I just place an asteroid randomly when the game is made, but I don't do anything else with it. Maybe I should do this every few seconds. Because otherwise the screen will fill up. And if I leave the game unattended, it'll probably crash. But to do that, I'm gonna just keep track of a counter. Ah, I did the underscore thingy. Don't. Every time I do something in the new class, it seems to have problems with me doing something. Asteroid spawner and crash again. Yeah, it does seem to crash again. Maybe there's an update to this, because I updated it yesterday, and before, like last stream, I didn't have problems with it crashing all the time. It was a bit slow, but nothing like this. It did crash again, it seems. Ah, how I miss mono develop. This editor used to be called mono develop on everything but Windows, and it's then Microsoft bought it, and Let's just say they didn't make it better. Which is a shame, because Microsoft has a lot of good functionality, but for some reason they seem to not want to implement that on Mac and just ask you to convert to Windows, which is also fine, I guess. Alright, let me recapture it. There we go. Recapture the magic. Just use the original file. Alright. I'm gonna add 2 counters here. One frame counter and 1 asteroid counter. Jeez, don't fucking crash again. It is crashing again. Well, I never. Oh my god, it really is crashing again. Now that is high quality software. Not responding. Great. Well, I am going to finish it, but guess this might be a hint that I should probably stop streaming soon. Alright, recapture. Nah, there's nothing weird open either, it's really crashy today. There were a lot of trouble with Rider and the GXPEngine because you had to manually import the references, and I think I've had it fixed, but I forgot how I did it. But you should be able to use it with the GXPEngine. The main reason I use Mac, well, I use Mac, but I for my personal use, I never use Visual Studio. I use either Rider for Unity or CLion for C++, Atom for normal files, WebStorm for everything web related, everything but Visual Studio really. Atom is a good free editor as well. And on Mac, development goes very smoothly. It is true that it has less performance though. My laptop is pretty this laptop is not, it's pretty powerful, but not nearly as powerful as a desktop computer or many Windows computers. But still, for web development, app development, and Unity game development, I would highly recommend a Mac or Ubuntu, like Linux, because Linux environments, which Mac is also, are made for development. They're not, and they really excel at it, like having friendly, user-friendly stuff specifically for developers. Unless it keeps crashing all the time. But like I said, probably not the fault of... Yeah, alright. No. Alright. Alright, Visual Studio. I know your game. Yeah, it is crashing again. My god. High quality. I know some of my colleagues like Windows more, and I can't fault them for that. But I've been using Linux for a long time, before I had money. And when I could buy a Mac, I saw my friends using it, all engineers as well, and I was sold on how easy to use it is, and how clean the interface is, which is a big plus for me. Because I feel like my head gets cluttered if my desktop on my computer is cluttered. So I just usually have a background and maybe one file on my desktop, but nothing else. Alright, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just edit the source file in another editor and then run it in SLN. Maybe I have monodevelop installed. Let me check. It used to be part of Unity. Yeah. Alright, we're switching to a different editor now. Which is not made for this kind of stuff, but it's fine. Fuck it, I'm not trying it again. It crashed 3 times in a row, that's not worth it. Alright. Though this resolution is a bit off. This is a very good editor, it can't run C# without installing some plugins. But it's free, and you can find it at atom.io. At least I can edit here without it crashing, so. Frame counter. And an asteroid counter. Nah, that wasn't so hard. In the update, I'm just going to count frames now. Not going to do anything fancy with delta time for now. And if the asteroid counter, whoops, autocomplete doesn't work. Counter is smaller than 5. Then we're going to add an asteroid. Oh, smaller than 5. We're going to keep counting. Frame counter plus plus. If the frame counter modulo 60, so every second. Modulo 180 means every 3 seconds at 60 frames per second. And then this is going to spawn a little asteroid. At the random position. Well, that part is gone apparently. I think I did 100 and then a width minus 100. Autocomplete doesn't work here, so I just have to remember. Painful. Height minus 100, and be sure to add it as a child. And every time we do this, the asteroid counter goes up. Because we've added another asteroid. So this should add 5 asteroids over the course of 15 seconds. Right. Now I guess I'll have to open it in Visual Studio anyway. No, stop it. Visual Studio is not showing up in my streaming thingies. Uh-oh. Did Twitch give up on me? I'll just drag it in front of the other one. If I hack it and it works, it's not a hack, right? VS Code, I should download that one. I think Visual Studio Community is very similar to VS Code, but VS Code I think is the true, like what used to be mono developed. First let's see if this works. Yeah. Whoa, 3 seconds later, another one shows up. 3 seconds later, another one shows up. Well, they're all spawning quite... Oh, right. They are spawning all over the place. And I should be able to shoot them. Yeah. Of course, they stop spawning after 5 of them have spawned. Because then the asteroid counter is on 5, and then it won't spawn anymore. So, your exercise for you people following along at home will be... After the asteroid destroys itself, so after impact is called, the now private int, which I'm just gonna make public for now as a hint, asteroid counter should be 1 lowered again, so that every time one is destroyed, a new one can be spawned after a few seconds. VS Code, yeah, I'm gonna look for that right now. because I am done with this. Though it hasn't crashed yet. Ah, crap, it is the same as VS Community on Mac, it seems. Ah, we'll see. I'll give it a try for next time as well. Because I'm in a dire need of an alternative that is also easy to use. I don't need more than autocomplete. Autocomplete and maybe auto layout. Like this. Control I. Boom! Everything is neatly laid out. That's all you need when editing code. Right. Like I said, I'll leave it as an exercise for you guys to... if the asteroid destroys itself, it has to deduct 1 point from the total amount of asteroids that are in play, this asteroid counter. Notice that I made it a public integer. Notice that it's part of my game. And also notice that every object has access to the game via the game variable. So game.width is the same as the width right here. However, this game is not yet my game, like this. My game has the extra properties you've added by inheriting from game. Did it crash again? It did crash again. Oh, that is back. Okay. I was getting pissed off. All right. So you have the game object, very similar to the other objects here, which if you know it's of type my game, you know that it has a property called asteroid counter, sorry, that you can manipulate. Nice hints, thanks. You know how to do this, I assume. But yeah, if you realize what we did here, you have to do something similar to do that. Any other quick questions? Or any questions? Notepad++ was basically my go-to editor on Windows, but for stuff that I had to edit on the fly, like Atom is on Mac. If I have to open a JSON file or whatever, I'll just use Atom. Still not recognized. Wow. Whatever. How about this? Yeah, it's back. Still though, I'm not gonna do anything with it. Ah, and the playlist is over. Well, if that isn't good timing, then I don't know what is. I would not use Atom to open anything more than 2 MB worth of files. Though I like it a lot, it is not meant for big files. Like if you want to use databases, you should probably access through something called something simple like phpMyAdmin, or if you're using Robo3T, is an application you can use for certain types of databases like Mongo, and I think they support Postgres and MySQL probably as well. I wouldn't use Atom for it because it crashes, I think, if you open a file over 4 MB, and if it's anything over 2 MB, it already has like quite a bit of difficulty. And databases easily grow in size. I wouldn't use it for that. Though I like it a lot, like I said, but it's not perfect. There is, yeah, depending on what you want to use MySQL for. There's something called SQLite, which you don't have to run a server for it. You can just put an SQLite file in your, for example, in your debug folder here, and C# has bindings to connect to that database right there without having to install anything, and you can put stuff in the database if you want. But if you want to use it, for example, for keeping track of high scores, it's probably easier to just store it in a file. Like create a new text file, just store a number in it, 2000, and that is your high score. If you want to use it for more complex stuff, then a database might be good. For anything that requires relationships, it might be good because especially SQLite and MySQL are relationship-based databases. So you can say a player has a gun has a type of bullet, a bullet has a value of how much damage it does, of how far it flies, or how much the drop off is and stuff like that. Then a database would be nice, but mostly you can do everything with code, or just store the numbers you need, the only thing that are variable. Yeah. Oh yeah, Coda is another one of those editors. Yeah, it doesn't like to open large files. It technically could because it's nothing more than just zeros and ones, which could be read as. Oh, you can rename it. Cool. Which yeah, it will try to open, but then it just crash. Yeah, Coda is nice though. Yeah, it is only on Apple. Though it's similar to Notepad++ and Atom and one other one that I really enjoy, which is technically free, is called Sublime. I think version 3 or so is out now. Yeah, you could store that in a database. It might be overkill though. If you were to create a text file in the bin directory that has just the data like this, name. Yeah, of course it'll autocomplete. I'll put it in the comments. So your text file will look something like name, score. So 1 through 37. Other name, 4, 5, 6, 7. So every line has a username followed with a colon, followed with the score. Then you can do the same thing we did with the same thing we did with the inner XML for the tiles. You can do a split on it. So you go over each line and then you split it on the colon, for example. And yeah, then you can easily get the name and the value of the score individually. Like for example, if you were to read every line individually, you'll have a line like this, string line equals this. Did it crash? Almost. Not yet. You can do a line.split on the colon symbol, which will return a string array of both things. High score data. And you'll know that the first one on the left side of it is going to be the name, right line, high score data at position 0. You're going to know it's going to be an array with only 2 things in it, namely the name and the score. So the first position is always going to be the name. The second position is always going to be the score. So you can just say user has a score of like that. And if I were to run this, other than the rest of the code also running and the game will playing. Yeah, you can see the user name has a score of 1337. So if you store all these lines individually, the first time you split on the enter, which I think you can get for environment.newline. Yeah, that's it. So this is actually a character or a string. Does this work? Does not work. This is a string containing the enter character, like the new line character for your operating system. So on Mac, this is different than on Windows. New line equals. I don't know if I can see what it is. Ah, nope. Just decompiled code. No, we don't want to browse the assembly. Thank you. On Windows, this will be /r/n. On Mac, this is /n, I think. On Linux, this is also /n. Yeah, actually, Windows is the only one that's different. But yeah, you don't have to worry about it. So if you split the file on the new lines and then split the lines individually on the points and the colons, you'll have a user and score. All right. Bit quiet without all the music now. I miss it now. All right. Right. I think this is it for today. I will be covering how to do collisions, casting, and more stuff about inheritance and such during the next lecture, which is all about collisions, and how you could and probably should use them. I'm going to show you how to collect collectibles and whatnot, which is similar. Because now we shoot something, a projectile at an asteroid, and if they collide, we just disappear both of them. But what we probably want to do is, as a player, you want to be able to collide with coins and collect them. Or coins collide with the player, maybe. Think about it. It's all relative. Or you could save it as a JSON, yeah. I'm not sure if that's easy. Yeah, it's nostalgic, right? The GXPEngine being basically a thing of the past for most people. I do think it's a good learning tool for stuff like this. It's something allows people to get started with game engineering, because most of these principles do copy straightforwardly to Unity. The game objects being relative to each other and such. A lot of stuff won't, but still. The input system is also very similar in Unity. Yes, it did. It did get fixed. In fact, we've made it a lot better. We've added so much stuff since previous iteration. Now we have the easy draw. Oh my god, did it crash? What a way to go out. But yeah, the canvas did get fixed. Destroying objects and not having their memory linger around for another frame has been fixed. You can now call destroy in the update or wherever, and it doesn't break the update function. Canvases can also be destroyed at some points and not break anything. Text can be called at any point and not break anything. You can now draw lines, rectangles, ellipses, all that good stuff as well. All that good stuff. Alright. Yeah, I'm not going to start it again because I think it's just screwed. I might do a reinstall and see if that fixes anything, because this is unworkable. First I'm going to try Visual Studio Code though, that's a good tip. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, hope this stream has been useful. Yeah. Any more questions about GXPEngine or specific ones? You can email me, and if you want something to be covered during the next one. Next week I think I'll make a simple game, not asteroids, something else. Simple mobile-ish kind of game to show you how to structure stuff and use collision detection. But any suggestions are welcome as well. I hope this is enough to work with for the next next week. And after that it's vacation time. I'm not sure if I'll be streaming in a vacation, because let me check the calendar. Thursday the 20th, Thursday the 27th. It's not Christmas. So I might stream. But yeah, I might not. Probably though. I don't know. What else do I have to do, right? Sure. I will. Thank you. I'll in case I'll need a helping hand with the GXPEngine as well. Alright. Well, good stream. Talk to you guys later, and good luck with all the collision detection and whatnot. I'm sure you'll do fine. Sure you'll do fine in the future. Bye. Good night. I'm gonna have some dinner. It's dinner time. 10 past 10:30. All right, that's fine. It's fine. It's healthy. Good night. Hell yeah, pizza. I'm just gonna heat up some old pizza. That's fine.